I've made a video game. It's for a game jam, the 20th anniversary of Ludum Dare. And you know what? It's perfect. Let's talk game design. For those of you that don't know, Ludum Dare is a long-running global game jam where you can either make a game on your own to enter a strictly ruled competition, or team up with other people and join the more loosely regulated jam category. This time around there's actually a new extra category where you can work on your game for, I think, as long as you want, just to have some casual input and take part in the event. I always enter the competition because there's so many game jams throughout the year where I can, if I want, experiment or collaborate with other people, but only the Ludum Dare competition lets me test myself and my personal limits. The theme this time around was delay the inevitable. Now the obvious first thought for many of you will be to make a game about delaying the destruction of the Earth. This is shallow, smooth-brained thinking for the creatively bankrupt, and I, as a golden god, obviously did exactly that. As a side note, I did get to thinking about the best existing example that would fit this theme, and it's one that you're probably familiar with: Tetris. Think about it. Play Tetris for long enough and eventually you'll lose, but your performance is to just delay that inevitable game over state by erasing lines as fast as you can. Knowing this is really liberating because I probably can't out-design or out-produce Tetris in a weekend, so whatever I do is automatically not going to be the best game ever made. That takes off a lot of pressure. Instead, what I decided to do was keep it simple, and it's here that I need to go back to the bold claim from the start of the video. I'm not saying I've made the perfect game. I'm saying I've made the perfect game jam game. Let me explain. Ordinarily, you design a game according to what you want it to achieve. You get an intent in your mind, plan it out, and start laying down foundations and systems that will move you gradually towards that goal that you have in mind, tweaking and adjusting until you've created something that fits within the boundaries of your initial intention. In a game jam, that's all out the window. Instead, what you want to do is aim for a finished product. All game jams are different, but most of them come with a time limit. In the case of the Ludum Dare competition, that time limit is 48 hours. That, my friends, is not a lot of time. Therefore, to make something suitable for this particular game jam, there's a few things you need to keep in mind. The first of which is: a game jam under a very strict time limit can't be particularly complicated. Well, it can, but it probably shouldn't be, because you don't have very long to do the thing, and the more complexity you add, the more chance of it spiralling out of control and missing the submission deadline. This time around, to keep the scope small, I focused on a very arcade-like, simple gameplay mechanic: rotating around the Earth, shooting asteroids. That was it, a single simple mechanic that I had working within minutes. With this in place, I knew I immediately had something I would finish. This is a skill that you gain from experience, and after years of doing game jams, I have a pretty good idea of what I, personally, can achieve in 48 hours. If you'd like to learn the same skill, you'll need to enter a lot and fail repeatedly. Good luck. Part of sorting out the scope of your entry is also in figuring out to what degree you're going to adhere to the theme. Some game jams have the theme as a sort of suggestion, like a guideline, where you use it to give you inspiration for your idea, and there isn't much focus on whether you actually hit it or not. The Ludum Dare competition has a voting category specifically focused on how well you've integrated the theme into your idea, so I wanted to make sure that I hit that brief as hard as I could. As a result, the asteroids that are falling to Earth will speed up and increase in number as the game continues, until they eventually reach a point where even the most incredibly talented player can't hold on any longer, and the Earth goes boom. Wholesome. Now, hitting the brief and fitting the scope within what's possible in 48 hours is all well and good, but if I'm going to stand out and demonstrate my incredibly godlike powers of game design, I'm going to need to look at something that'll add depth to the still very simple mechanic. You'll notice that I only started doing this after I'd already decided on and implemented a core gameplay mechanic. I know I said not to make your game overly complex, but once you've got something solid to build on top of, you're okay to go ahead and play with it and see what you can add for a little extra depth. In this case, I went with a passenger ship that will periodically leave Earth for a rotating space station. If it lands, you'll get a massive boost in points, but if it crashes into an asteroid or if you accidentally shoot it, you'll be responsible for the murder of about 10,000 people, but more importantly, your score won't increase. This adds another layer and element to the standard gameplay and gives the player something else to focus on. It's an easy and manageable way to add a little complexity, and it's still well within the scope of what I'm capable of. Speaking of what I'm capable of, another thing that makes this the perfect game jam game and a lesson you ought to take away from it is: if you're doing a game jam solo, you'll need to figure out what it is that you can't do. Some people are blessed with the abilities to handle graphics, programming, sound and music creation to a level that makes others look like toddlers. But it's fine because nobody invites those people to cool parties and they have no friends. I'm not bitter, what are you talking about? The rest of us have to get creative and clever about how we fill in those blind spots in our individual talents. Take, for instance, my graphics. My artistic ability, or lack thereof, is a well-documented point of public record, so I've been playing with a bit of a cheat. That cheat involves going into Blender, constructing a vague shape out of simple geometric blocks, then taking that thing and slapping it into a program on Steam called Pixelover, or I suppose if you read it another way, Pixielover. In Pixielover, you can take a 3D model and play around with colour palettes and various settings and filters, until it creates something that looks like you spent absolutely hours of talented graft on. Now when it comes to audio, I don't know how to make music. I do, however, know how to talk. I'm good at the part where my mouth moves and noises come out. In fact, I'm doing it right now. This leads me on to something else that you'll need for the perfect Game Jam game. We've covered how you might cover up for things you're not good at, but it's equally as important, and probably more so, to realise what you are good at, what makes you stand apart from everyone else, where your strengths lie and what unique abilities you have that you can leverage to your advantage. I, for example, am hilarious. Shut up. As a result, I've learned to try and work some comedic element into most of my Game Jam games. My best performance when I teamed up with Jay for the Blackthorn Prod Jam was a perfectly packaged example of context and humour, elevating a very simple and enjoyable gameplay loop underneath. Now, if it's not broke, don't try and fix it. As a result, my Ludum Dare entry has scheduled audio narration from a fictional captain's seat on the escape shuttles, triggered at 1,000 point intervals. Passengers are kindly requested not to wail in despair in the aisle, as this does impede our cabin crew's ability to sell you overpriced drinks from the snack cart. It's just something else to add a little flair and flavour to the simple mechanics underneath. And it didn't take much time at all, because the narration production workflow is something I can do more or less in my sleep. And that's it really, that's how you make the perfect Game Jam game. You manage your scope, find creative solutions to your own limits, and accentuate and leverage your strengths as much as you can. Now, although this is clearly the perfect Game Jam game, I should stress that I don't expect to win the Ludum Dare competition. There are a lot of reasons for this, but the main one is that, sadly, the judging process of any major Game Jam is a bit of a lottery. If you've entered a Game Jam before, and then gone on to play other entries as part of the judging process, you're going to know full well what it is I'm about to tell you. If you haven't, this might sound really arrogant, but, you know, I'm going to power through it anyway. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, that your vote is worth exactly the same as everyone else who entered the jam, which is fine and sounds very democratic, until you play some of the other entries and realise that, what's the best way to say this? Some people make absolute garbage. I'm not being mean or anything, I've made a lot of garbage before, it's part of the learning process. Most of what you put out, especially in game jams, is garbage. They're rapidly iterative, mad dashes where many people make their first games ever, and if you've ever submitted anything to a game jam at all, you should be proud of yourself. But you have no control over whether the people rating your game are seasoned veterans who get what you were doing and see how brilliant it is, or 11-year-old little Timmy who's submitted a Unity example project where he's replaced the main character with someone from Fortnite. You have no say in it, you're just tossed to the random whims of chance. But that's okay, I'm still proud of the game, and I think you, the discerning LTGD audience, can see what makes this the perfect Game Jam game. Mostly it's that I finished it with enough time to write this script on the Sunday afternoon while the jam was still going on, which if nothing else is a level of time management that I never thought I was capable of. If you've liked this video, then be sure to like this video so I know that you liked this video, then subscribe for more videos like this video since you liked this video, and I'll see you the next time I'm thinking, hey, let's talk game design.